when I was a child and couldn't walk after the stroke.
Mhm.
My sister finally got tired of watching me sit there in the wheelchair day after day, took a can of my favorite soda, placed it across the room, and says, "All right, you lazy bum, you can have this if you can get it."
Wow, wow.
So I got up and I got it, had myself a drink.
Hey, welcome to Wonderful Works Talks, where we talk all about the disability ministry mission of helping churches become accessible for all. I'm your host, Barb Stanley, and today we have a really insightful conversation with journalist Cam Wells. Cam is a childhood stroke survivor and passionate advocate for disability, especially regarding how disability is portrayed in the media. Let me tell you, this interview is chock full of things that will make you think more deeply and change your perspective. It's that good. But before we get to all that, I have a question for you. Do you think how communities are portrayed impacts how they are accepted in society? And what if a community is portrayed in a way that is meant to be helpful, but is actually harmful? And yes, I'm looking at you, inspirational posts. Well, this is a question that we'll be tackling today as we talk about why real stories matter, what parents should know if their child goes through a sudden trauma, what true inclusion at church feels like, and we get to hear a little of Cam's own story. So much good stuff. So without further ado, please help me welcome Cam Wells. Today, we are really excited to have Cam Wells with us. Cam is the host of Handy Link, which is a syndicated radio program in Canada on CJAM 99.1. And Cam is a passionate disability advocate, and we're so glad to have you here today.
It's my pleasure. Anything I can do to bolster the disability community, I'm always happy to do.
Absolutely. So I know that about you, Cam, that you are super passionate about this, and especially about how disability stories are portrayed in the media. Can you kind of tell us why you're so passionate about this and a little bit about your own story?
Well, it kind of began when I was doing my first of my four diplomas, which was journalism and new media. I was given a scholarship or bursary by a disability group at a very low point in my life, and that sort of turned the tide for me. So I thought to return the favor by doing a year of public relations, designing newsletters, videos, what have you, for this group. Well, I sort of noticed as I researched there were two ways that disability stories are typically told. That's either really bitter or really inspirational,
Mhm.
which I came to relate as a point in a course I've designed on accessibility that
Mhm.
when a person with a disability gets up and makes toast in the morning, that's not per se inspirational. That's called eating, and I think a lot of people do it personally.
Right, right. So I want to put a pin in that for 1 minute because I want to come back to that. It's a super important point. But can you tell us a little bit about your own story and why this issue is so important to you?
Well, my own story, September 29th, 1995, I was in the fourth grade. I was having lunch at school one day, made the mistake of eating a can of frozen juice, and I thought I was having a brain freeze.
Mhm.
Turned out to be a stroke. I was momentarily dead. I was spent 6 days in a coma after intense neurosurgery, and they found out part of the anomaly in my brain had been left behind and essentially was inoperable in this country. So I ended up having what was then a somewhat experimental procedure over in Detroit, and
Wow.
well, they were able to remove it. And well, I was left with diminished capacity in one arm and one leg.
Mhm.
And well, as a kid growing up, everyone expected that I would just kind of go back to who I'd been, and that's what I learned along the way. That a person doesn't just bounce back to the life they knew.
Right.
Disability life is it's about adapting. It's about finding new ways of doing things.
You had said in some of the interviews I had listened to that you felt like you came back different after the stroke, but that you wouldn't change it. What did you mean by that?
Well, to be entirely honest about it, the stroke led me to everything I value in my life, be it my life of faith, my job, my friends. The experiences I've had are largely traceable to that. Plus, it gave me this perspective on the world not a lot of people get.
Mhm.
Some people just see the surface of life. They see the top of the iceberg, but they have no idea how deep it really goes. And, well, having lived both as quote unquote a normal person and living life as someone with a disability, I had some very unique opportunities to see
Mhm.
people can do so much more. They can be so much more than they're given credit for.
Mhm.
Plus which, in a bizarre twist of things, my disability actually led me to meet my childhood hero about 4 years ago.
Wow, who's that?
An actor named Chris Potter. He did a voice in the 1990s X-Men series. What was cool was, after the stroke, I used to watch that show, and it was my oasis. It was my half hour when I didn't have to think about the pain I was in and the rehab I was going through. So, a disability group arranged for him and one of his fellow voice actors to be in the area, and given that I had done some media work for this group before, I called in a favor, got to meet him and his co-star, lovely lady by the way, working with him, and got a photo with him, autographs, and after 27 years I had a chance to say, your show saved my life. It gave me something to focus on, so thank you.
Wow, that is so cool. We don't often think about that, that sometimes we do all get in those places in life where you need that one thing to kind of get you through. And well, how awesome you got to meet those people that helped you in that time.
Yeah.
So you said when you came back, you became a person with a disability that changed your perspective on the world and kind of how you saw things. And would you say that you feel like that has made you a deeper, stronger person?
I kind of had to be. I mean, as a kid, I remember there was a guy used to follow me around, try to stick magnets to my leg to see if it was real, and
Oh, wow.
this went on for over 3 years actually. It was very tough on me, being a child who would come from a place where I was quote unquote normal, going to a place where people looked at me differently. I found that I had to use what I had to keep my head above water. Sometimes that meant telling a bad joke. Sometimes it meant showing off what I knew in class, which got me in trouble more than once. But it's just, it gave me this sort of need to just live to the fullest. I mean, you don't know how strong people are until you go through something like that. I mean,
Mhm,
disability is basically a matter of living by necessity, I think.
mhm,
You know what works for you. You know what you need to do. You know what you want to do.
mhm,
And you bear those principles in mind. You just build from a place of, this is what I want. How do I get there?
mhm.
And I hope that makes some semblance of sense. I really, really do.
No, I think it does. I think from what you're telling us, because you had the stroke and it was a very sudden thing, you had a sudden change, and you
Yeah.
kind of had to figure out from that point on how to cope and do things differently. And what I'm hearing is that you have some inner resilience in there, that you're a strong person probably to begin with, and then you kept working through that.
Yeah. But we've all got that strength, you know. I mean, it's just a question of needing to tap into it. What I found through the show and just my other job, which is for a disability sports league, I found that finding that outlet can be the beginning of strength. A lot of injury survivors, for example, as soon as they realize adaptive sport might be an option for them, gives them that focus, that something to say, if I can be strong in this area of my life, maybe I can carry that someplace else.
Mhm. That makes sense. So the people who really have that strength coming through, because I think sometimes when people go through really hard things, it can change you. And sometimes I think it can change you for the better. And then for some people, if you kind of get stuck in feeling bad, it's not always a great change. But
Yeah.
for those who really find that strength, you think it starts from finding something that they can excel in and building from that?
Yeah. Although I have encountered those who are inclined to blame their disability for all their problems, and
Mhm.
honestly, that became my rule with the show. From an ethical standpoint, I will not put anybody on the air who will denigrate disability culture.
Uh-huh.
They've all got enough people telling them you can't do this, you can't do that. And how long before that's written in rock, so to speak?
Right. Right. So your show, a big part of your show is changing that perspective, as we said, about disability stories. And now let's go back to what you'd mentioned in the beginning, that you had kind of noticed in the media that a lot of the stories about disability were either centered around bitterness and victimhood or inspiration.
Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners why that's a problem?
Because it's not balanced. If you get a steady diet of one thing or the other, you're only going to hear one thing or the other. You're going to believe it. You're going to either believe all people with disabilities are broken and resent society and they want to take too much, or you're going to believe they're superheroes and they're going to get up and run a marathon even though they were told they could never do it. In some cases, this might be true, but it's not everybody. If you've met one person with a disability, congratulations, you've met one person with a disability.
Right. Right. And I think you mentioned also that sometimes people will treat people with disabilities like everything they do is inspirational.
Yeah, that's definitely not okay. I mean,
Yeah.
if you go up to someone you've never met in a bar and they happen to be in a wheelchair, you don't just go up and say, "Oh, you're so brave for sitting there and trying to have your dinner. Oh, that's so amazing." You don't do it. It's disrespectful. It's saying, "I see the disability more than I see the person."
hmm I want us to just stop here for a minute because I have talked to people many times in the past who that they've not realized that yet. And so they think sometimes when they say things, they're giving someone a compliment. Speaking to these people who mean well but are not getting it, how does that make you feel if someone says something to you like you're such an inspiration when you're just living your average everyday life?
Well, I'll give you a great example, and this is when I was about 16 or so. I was recovering from hand surgery. I had a tendon lengthening, and I had a bunch of stitches, bunch of staples. Here you can kind of see the scars a little
hmm
bit. But I was in this waiting room, and I was waiting to have the stuff removed, and this woman looks at me, never seen her before or since. She just says, "Oh, you're so amazing for taking that level of pain." To which I said, "Look, lady, we all have pain. We all deal with it in our own way. My pain is no more or less important than yours. I'm no better or worse because I've been through this. I'm simply a guy waiting to have a medical procedure."
Mhm.
I hope that kind of makes sense there.
I think it makes a lot of sense. So, what would you tell people if they see someone who has a disability? Because sometimes people feel like they don't know what to say.
But more than anything else, they're a person. I mean, there are people, and I use this example a lot. You can go up to them and say, "Hey, buddy, you're blind." There are some who will hit you in the face, and there are some that'll just laugh and go, "Yeah, I know."
Uh-huh.
I mean, one person I interviewed a few years ago said, "You look at my wheelchair, that is how I get around. That is not who I am."
Right.
And that really stuck with me.
So, one thing that I have heard from a lot of people that have disabilities is that people make a lot of assumptions about them. Sometimes because they have a physical disability, people assume they also have an intellectual disability. What do you want people to know about that?
Well, it's what I always say on the air, and this is something I very firmly believe. What you read about any given disability in any textbook, it's a baseline. It does not factor in the strength of the person. It does not tell you who their supports are or what they can accomplish in life. You can't look at a newborn child born with epilepsy and say, this child will only grow up and achieve A, B, and C. How do you know? But when you look at people telling this person they can achieve great things, if it's someone you trust, maybe they're more likely to believe that. However, if you get someone telling you you can't achieve and it's a respected source, that becomes cemented. You don't want to do that either way. The best thing you can do with any disability, with any person, let them explore their potential. Let them find out for themselves it's impossible before you brand it impossible. And even so,
Mhm.
it's impossible today, maybe not tomorrow.
Right. So, if you are speaking to someone, your words matter.
Yeah,
Uh, but let me ask you this, Cam. What about people who they just don't say anything? Do you ever find people with disabilities sometimes feel invisible? And what does that do to someone?
absolutely. There are times they feel invisible. There are times in workplaces you'd find someone with a disability afraid to speak up, even if they have a solution or they have a new idea, and honestly, it destroys confidence. Maybe once they can look and say, oh, that's okay, I'll speak next time. But if they keep letting it fall by the wayside, it becomes a problem, becomes a pattern. I mean, the more you start to believe you don't matter, the more others believe it too. The best thing anyone with a disability can do is be a part of the community. Do the things they love to do, meet people, share their story honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a matter of something to be ashamed of.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've had people assume things about me based on the way I walk, the way I get things done. The operative words being, I get things done.
I was just going to say that. It's
But,
like, wait, I heard that.
I mean, life is adaptation.
Right.
Maybe it's not something your judges have to think about today. Tomorrow, they could wake up and find their brain got dunked in 11 herbs and spices and put in the deep fryer, too.
Uh-huh.
And that is honestly what having a stroke feels like, just for the record. Explained that to a CPR instructor once who looked at me like I grew another head.
Yeah. So if you are someone with a disability who has felt invisible before, what do you want them to know?
I just want you to know you're not the only one. World statistics place disabilities at approximately 25% of the population. That is so lowballing it, it's not even funny. Consider all the conditions we haven't diagnosed yet, places we can't get statistics from, and those people who just, no, I don't have a disability. No, you're thinking of someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And there are those people.
Mm-hmm.
But bottom line, you're not alone and you are stronger than you know. There are people who have gone through the same thing. And don't be afraid to seek out those people because maybe their methods won't work 100% for you, but at least you can learn something in the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine that community and support is really important.
Yeah. I mean, there's an old quote I heard from a show I like, says, family is a tyranny ruled over by its weakest member, but a person with a disability is only perceived as having a weakness. These people have lived through things that defy explanation. I
Yeah.
once interviewed a woman who lived for 10 years with stage 4 breast cancer.
Mhm.
She'd been given 6 months. And
Wow, 10 years?
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
amazing.
She's no longer with us now, but she was she was a friend, and
Yeah,
it's all a matter of what keeps you running. If you got something to live for, chances are you're going to live for it.
absolutely. Tell me a little bit about some of the people you have interviewed on your show. Is there anyone in particular that really stands out that really stuck with you, what they had to say?
Oh, there's been a million. I've actually built my course using some of my very best interviews. One of the people I tend to think of the most was a man named Bent Lindqvist. He was a man who was blind, gave Sweden some of its first Braille literature, just demanding equal rights. He took me through about 40 years of the Swedish disabilities movement and some of the ways he felt dehumanized and just the way that after all those years of struggle, he finally got some progress. Another guy, a quadriplegic pilot, described the total freedom he felt being up in a glide plane versus spending his day in a wheelchair.
Wow.
It's one of my favorites. Interviewed everyone from Bill Nye the Science Guy to a past lieutenant governor. But the truth is, the best stories come from everyday people, people who are just doing what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
Any politician can make promises and read the same political speech 5 times a day. But someone who's been up till 3 in the morning trying to find support for their daughter's genetic disorder, chances are they'll give you their life story. And
Right.
that's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
You want something of substance and meaning when you talk to people.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit more about your radio program, HandyLink.
Yeah, the name of it is actually a reference to a sci-fi show, and I keep joking I'll marry the woman who gets that joke. It's a reference to TV's Quantum Leap.
Ah, I used to
The
watch that.
character Al,
Mhm.
the hologram from the future, had a terminal called a hand link that gave him all the information about what was going to happen, and Well, I had about 5 seconds to think when they asked me for a name of my show, and I'm thinking, what did I watch last night? So, boom, there it is. But yeah, I've been doing it 18 years now,
Wow.
ever since I finished my first diploma. Thing was, as soon as I graduated, I knew I wanted to kind of keep my skills up. What I didn't count on was very much falling in love with the idea of bolstering the disability community.
Hmm.
I've done all sorts of topics. I mean, I do 3 every episode, but you never know what you're going to get, and that's the most exciting part.
Tell me, over the past 18 years, when you started this, what does disability community and advocacy look like now compared to then?
Well, progress is basically on the continental drift plan. There are some policies they're still working on,
Yeah.
but I do see that there's a greater attention to it. I do see that people are starting to care more. Maybe it's an aging population. Maybe it's just that a large group won't be silent for long. I don't know. But
Hmm.
you see things like the Paralympics, which is getting more and more attention.
Hmm.
I see the world taking more notice, but I also see people are taking it more into their own hands. I mean, people with disabilities are coming up with new innovations.
Right.
Like, if you look at technology like Alexa that didn't exist when I first started,
Right.
it can have tremendous advantages for someone with a disability who, say, can't operate a light switch. If
Right.
they can just use the words, that make all the difference. And for the record, I once interviewed a guy who was completely nonverbal and talked through one of those computer voice boxes.
Oh, wow.
You know, that was just my thinking that even though he can't speak, he's still got a voice and he still has something to say.
That's absolutely right. So, are you seeing more stories getting out from people?
Yeah, a little bit, but well, one thing I've always been troubled by, and this is an ongoing battle, mostly disability sports stories. You hear them when there's a large event, the Special Olympics, the Paralympics, but you never hear about the day-to-day stuff. These
Right.
athletes are training every day. They are doing something every day.
Right.
I know this because I work in this world, but well, it's just you look at a sports page, you don't ever see an equal amount of coverage. You don't ever see proper representation, in my opinion.
Mhm. What do you think needs to happen there?
I think there just needs to be an understanding that a steady diet of vanilla stories is fine, but sooner or later you want some variety.
Mhm.
There has to be a balance. At least, say, once a month, throw in a disability story. Look at what their athletes are doing. Look at how they feel about the able bodied equivalents. Look at some of the leagues where both are playing.
Mhm.
I mean, how many people do you ever hear of who know what goal ball is?
I don't. What is that?
It's kind of like a blind lacrosse. It's sort of played with a ball that emits a tone, and that's something I've learned as I've been doing the show. I've
Yeah.
learned a lot. I've come to understand that disability is a blanket term. It's a singular concept that when you break it down is 10 million smaller concepts.
That is so true.
I always refer to disability as not us versus them. It's a thread that weaves through every facet of life, every group in life.
Mhm.
It's not a family that hasn't been affected.
Mhm.
So, in any case of discrimination, you're just looking at your own heritage and saying, huh, doesn't matter.
What do you think we need to do, Cam, to get more unified in that?
Well, for starters, disability community needs to stop putting one priority ahead of another. You need to look at it as a unified front. You need to see disabilities coming together. I mean, take an autism agenda. That's no more important than a paralysis agenda.
Mhm.
However, in pushing through change in government, wouldn't you be stronger having the two together? You double your numbers, you double your resources, you double
Mhm.
your insights.
Mhm.
But as long as there's infighting among disability groups, you
Mhm.
can't present a united front that says, we are all one, we're all welcoming.
Mhm.
Because you acquire a disability tomorrow, I guarantee you, people affected in the same way. They're not going to look at you and say, ha ha, serves you right.
Right.
No, they're going to look at you and say, We're here to help you. We've been through this. We want you to be one of us. We want to strengthen you. But I think it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to take steps to say, I want to know more about different kinds of people. I don't want to live in just a circular community.
Mhm.
Yeah, you get homogenized groups, you get comfortable with the people you meet. That's very true, but you never really expand your own thinking by living that way.
Mhm. I agree with all of that. And I think that's why what you do is so important because I think the way to start bridging that gap is through understanding and to learn more and hear more from different perspectives is so important.
Yeah. Honestly, I've always lived by the old motto, truth is at the center of perspectives, because how I see it and how you see it, they're coming from different angles, but somewhere in there, there is what is real.
Yeah. Well, even if we see it differently, though, I think we all need to learn how to listen better. And
Yeah.
I think your point on the infighting is really valid. I've seen that in different communities as well, which is frustrating when you're trying to push awareness and push advocacy to get bogged down with that.
Past a certain point, it just becomes noise. If
Hmm.
all you do is rant and say, my needs are the only needs, how long before people stop listening? It's with reason and with integrity. People will ignore a statistic. They will not, however, ignore someone standing on your front porch saying, I have a disability, I need better options. I am a human being. I'm entitled to the same considerations as anyone else. It's a lot harder to look somebody in the eyes and to say, you don't matter to me, than it is to say, oh, that statistic's a tragedy. I wish we could do something, but we're too lazy to try.
Amen. And so, in order to get people's voices heard more, it's really important we make environments more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem in some ways I found.
Mhm.
I co authored a handbook on radio station accessibility a
Uh-huh.
few years ago, and I learned a very important lesson. What's accessible to one group is not necessarily accessible to another.
Right.
And there's always the question of, especially with the built environment, you can get them in the door. That's great. Then what? Is the work meaningful? Is this an inclusive space? Are
Mhm.
they actually welcome?
Mhm.
This is something I commented on in faith circles on the air not too long ago, that presence in a church doesn't necessarily equal inclusion in a church.
What, in your opinion, equals inclusion in a church?
Honestly, the same level of dignity and respect. People just talking to the person because they're there, because they're a congregant, not because you feel a sense of obligation or a sense of pity or a sense of, oh, we need to fix this person.
Mhm.
I've been on the receiving end of that in a most dehumanizing way.
Do you need to be fixed?
Yeah, I had someone attempt to faith heal my disability out of me without consent once.
Ugh.
And that was not okay. I've lived with that for a long time.
Yeah, I wish I could say that's the first time I've ever heard that story, but it's not.
Yeah.
Um, but I think this is really important for people to listen to. Again, with not making assumptions, you don't assume someone even wants healed from their disability.
Or
And
that they assume they're even in need of healing for
right,
that.
exactly. That's exactly right. And so that you used the word dehumanizing. Is that how you
Yeah.
felt in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, nothing really gets to you quite like someone that you care about, someone you trust, saying, you're not good enough unless. I
Right.
won't accept you unless. I mean, trying to fundamentally alter what somebody is the same as saying that you're not worth my time unless you move a certain way, see a certain way, hear a certain way, think a certain way.
Mhm.
And the world is built on diversity. It is built on different ideas. Having the same stagnant approach to things may work, but it never progresses.
Mhm. I think it's really important people hear this because I think when people do something like that, there's almost an assumption that they think everyone wants to be like them, right?
Yeah.
And that's not true.
Uh, to employ a sci fi reference once again, we're people, we're not the Borg.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it needed saying.
Where
But
people are not the Borg. Is that what you said?
the Borg,
I gotta
Star
brush
Trek,
up. I have to brush up on my sci-fi after this interview, Cam.
Star Trek reference to a group that assimilates others and turns them all into drones.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
But the thing
Yeah.
is, well, a lot of groups I've found have a real problem if you know something they don't, if you challenge their perceptions. Oh, we're fully accessible. No, you're not. There
Mhm.
was a terrific example during the pandemic, and this was something I'm both ashamed of and secretly proud of all at the same time.
Mhm.
I was attending a virtual medical conference, and a professor of medicine said no group is more susceptible to COVID than any other, to which I pointed out people with immune disorders are absolutely more susceptible.
Right.
The person looked at me like she wanted to kill me, but thing was, I was right.
Yeah.
And maybe she learned something by thinking about things in terms of there are other groups and other philosophies than just my own.
Right.
Once you get those eyes open, you start to have a different perspective.
Mhm.
I mean, if you see your way as the only way, you're never going to grow as a person, a worker, a family member, what have you. I mean, disability life can't be rigid.
Right.
If you get rigid, you blame. And if you blame, you get angry. You get angry, you get stuck. And
Mhm.
people notice that.
Mhm.
I mean, nobody, forgive me for saying it, but nobody wants to be around the person who actually is bitter and can't see any hope for their life.
Oh, they definitely do not.
I've known people who have been sort of stuck in their perception, saying their disability is only a hindrance. I've classified this in the chapter I designed on disabilities philosophy. I call this the victim's model. It's coming from the standpoint of the world is broken and there's nothing I can do about it.
Mhm.
There's also the entitlement model, which is I have a disability, I should be given more and special consideration.
Mhm.
What I subscribe most to is what I call the equality model, which is based on the idea that someone with a disability just does things in different ways. They're no better, they're no worse.
Mhm. Why do you think some people get stuck in the like victim or bitterness and can't move past that?
One word, rejection. We've all experienced it, but if you start to see it as, I didn't get this job because of my disability, or this girl won't go out with me because of my disability, you take it worse than this girl wouldn't go out with me because I'm not her type.
Right.
You start to see it as, if I didn't have this, I would be a better person. I would be more accepted. I'd be more included. And it shouldn't be that way.
Mhm.
People should just be taken as they are.
If you are someone who kind of recognizes maybe I'm kind of stuck in that place, whether it's because of a disability or anything else, what would you suggest to them to help push through that? Because that's no way to live. That's not a good way to live.
First thing, try something new. Get out of your comfort zone. Meet some new people and ask questions. If somebody's been down this road, chances are they've carved something of a trail that you can walk on.
Hmm.
Research how people have done it. One guy I interviewed wanted an accessible dune buggy to go on the beach. Quadriplegic guy. Problem is, there ain't no such thing as an accessible dune buggy. So this guy took the engine out of a 97 Saturn, dropped it into a frame, and he built one.
Wow.
Now there is such a thing. Why? Because he wanted to do it.
Hmm.
And he was willing to take that chance.
Hmm.
You're never going to progress if you don't take that chance. Great example, when I was a child and couldn't walk after the stroke,
Hmm.
my sister finally got tired of watching me sit there in the wheelchair day after day, took a can of my favorite soda, placed it across the room, and says, "All right, you lazy bum, you can have this if you can get it."
Wow. Wow.
So I got up and I got it, had myself a drink.
Wow. You got up and walked to get it?
Hmm.
Was that the first
Motivation.
was that the first time you had walked since the stroke?
Yep. My leg had restored some feeling, some movement, but it was kind of
Hmm.
still to the point where it was twitching. It was kind of all over the map, but
Hmm.
that really gave me something to focus on, a
Hmm.
reason to get up and try. Somebody's got that.
Hmm.
They will.
Yeah.
And somebody thinks they have nothing to live for, then surprise, surprise, they don't have anything to live for. But if a
Right.
person knows they're loved and knows that they are valued,
Yeah.
they'll fight tooth and nail. I've
Yeah.
interviewed people who were told that they'd never have kids, for example. I know
Hmm.
one guy, I think his 5 grandchildren, kind of beg to differ with that.
Yeah. Right.
I was told I'd never finish high school. My 4 college diplomas, 3 talk show awards, and 2 academic scholarships would kind of beg to differ on that.
I can tell if someone, like when someone tells you no, that makes you like 10 times more determined to do it.
Yeah, it's what you have to be. I mean, yeah, this person might be right, but how do you know that until you've taken that step yourself? How
Right.
can you know that this won't work? Edison didn't just invent the light bulb in one attempt. It took something like 118, I think. But, well, eventually he found a way.
Hmm.
People can tell you you're foolish for trying. And
Hmm.
sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. But it's up to you to discover that for yourself.
Hmm. And sometimes when they tell you you can't do something, it's because that way hasn't been invented yet. And it's up to you to come up with that innovation.
Sometimes it stems from their own bad experience, but what I always like to say is progress isn't about finding a cure, it's about taking steps in that direction. You take
Hmm.
enough of them, eventually you reach where you want to go.
That's right. And I think also remember that not everything comes easy, and that's okay. Like you got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it, even
Yeah.
when it's hard.
There's an old saying my dad used to sit me down once a year. He'd remind me of this. He'd say, the old quote was, we choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. So, speaking of your family, as I hear you talk about them, it sounds like they really love you and have been a good support for you. As a child that went through this big trauma, what would you tell parents if they had a child who'd gone through a big trauma or a change like this through that?
Well, I'd say, honestly, use of humor, give them something else to focus on. Like, this is going to sound stupid, but the first thing I did when I woke up from 6 days of coma to let my mom know I was all right, that I was still me, I quoted the Tostitos commercial. And she knew that I loved that commercial, so she's thinking to herself, he's still in there. It's things like that.
Yeah.
It's it's the little moments. You take the little wins where you can get them. Are you going to succeed at every time? No. Are there going to be setbacks? Certainly. But if you can enjoy the little moments together, like just spending time together, having a laugh. I mean, yeah, the pain's still going to be there. The hard times are still going to be there, but at least you have something to keep you running. I
Mhm.
mean, with my family, what we do is it's a show called Riff Tracks. Takes the worst movies in human history and does hilarious commentary over them.
Uh-huh.
And this day, me, my mom, and my brother, every Saturday we get together, we watch one, and we laugh our butts off.
Uh-huh.
It's sort of it's our outlet. It's time as a family, and well, it's kind of a psychological release.
Hearing you tell parents is they don't have to get it all perfect.
Yeah, I mean, a child, like anyone else, will feel if they're loved. If
Right.
they are considered a valuable member of the family and of the community,
Mhm.
they're going to recognize that. And that's not a strength that just stays at home. They'll do better in school, they'll do better with friends. They'll recognize that they are a person who counts. And I'll give you a great example from my niece Reese was really young, and this was hilarious. She was at an age before she knew what a disability really was. She had a friend with Down syndrome. She didn't know what Down syndrome was.
Mhm.
She decided her friend's only difference was that she spoke Spanish. So
Yeah.
we decided to go with that. We
Yeah.
decided, yeah, that's the only difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that way, she came to understand something about disabilities, even if she wasn't consciously aware of it.
Yeah. That the most important part about each person is what makes them interesting. It's not their disability.
Yeah, you get to recognize that disability is one part of the puzzle.
Mhm.
Of course, if you focus on that one piece of the puzzle, you're not going to see what it actually is.
Right.
If you start to recognize that I'm someone with a disability, I'm also an office hand, a brother, a son, an uncle, whatever else I may be.
A sci-fi fan, apparently.
Yeah.
So you also said you're a man of faith. Can you tell us a little bit about how your faith has influenced your journey in your life?
Well, it's had its good and bad. I mean, acceptance in church, as I mentioned, is it's an ongoing struggle. But truly, you don't just assume that someone coming into a church is automatically accepted.
Mhm.
You get to know them as they are. You accept that they are a person coming in wanting to learn about their faith just like anyone else. I mean, you take opportunities to serve, you take opportunities to meet people. You don't hide your story, and eventually you grow stronger. You form relationships, you form a new perspective. You start to realize that your disability is part of a greater plan.
Mhm.
Everything I value in my life can be traced to my disability.
Mhm.
And as a person of faith, I recognize that it's not a curse, it's not God's punishment for me or anyone I love.
Mhm.
It is something that has been orchestrated since long before I ever lived.
Have you felt God with you through everything?
In a lot of ways, I have, in a much deeper sense that I might have known than if I hadn't had the stroke. I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, I feel that my life in some ways is very directed. It's very much shaped by my life with a disability. I
Mhm.
feel that the work I'm doing is blessing others,
For
and that
sure.
gives me a sense of purpose. A lot of people of faith, they got to ask, what am I doing? What am I meant to do?
Right.
That's not a question I got to ask myself very much,
Mhm.
because somebody says, you listen to my story, you're the first guy ever to do that. I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I know that it's important enough that wherever my faith journey takes me, it's going to continue to lead me to
Mhm.
sharing my story and to blessing others. And I hope that does not sound too pompous. I really, really do.
No, I think your story is important. Um, I think your mission is important, Cam. The mission of lifting other people up and telling their stories in a way that isn't bitter or inspirational, but is actually like the full story of a person. That's important. That is, we need more of that to change the whole perspective of the world so that it's world changing, I think.
Kind of goes back to what I was saying about homogenized circles. It happens a lot in faith communities, I find. In
Mhm.
so much as, yeah, you want to hang out with the Christians you're comfortable with, for example.
Mhm.
But that's not what Christ did. He
Mhm.
hung out with the people who were the lowest of the low. And he didn't say, love thy neighbor unless he moves like this, or hears like this, or sees
Right.
like this. He just said, love.
Right.
And honestly, I think part of our duty as people of the church
Mhm.
is to build up others. No matter how you worship, where you worship, no
Mhm.
matter what people decide to assume about you, it shouldn't change the fact that you're giving your best and you're giving your heart to loving others the best way you can.
That's right. So if you were going to speak directly to church leaders, because that's who a lot of people listening will be, what do you tell them?
Very simple. Be ready. Someday, someone with a disability is going to cross your path if they haven't already. A
Mhm.
lot of disabilities you're not going to see. You could have people suffering in silence. Therefore, be inclusive to all. Be open to all. If someone says, I'm having a depression struggle today, don't just slough them off, tell them go read your Bible. Take a minute, listen to them, say, I want to give you next steps. It's easy to give a pablum answer, but the truth is, medical science and faith are alike in one thing. They weren't built on the assembly line principle. It's not about how many units you can get out in an hour. It
Mhm.
is about how many lives you can change today.
Ooh, that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a slide in my course on that. You have no idea the trouble I had finding a conveyor belt PowerPoint slide.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a good word that each person that God brings into your path and into your church, you need to be ready for.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have an accessibility concern today, who's to say you won't tomorrow?
So probably the first step they need to take is be ready to listen and get to know someone because each person is just so different.
Well, In that sense, yes, but if you know you have someone with a disability in your congregation, you might start with a simple question. Are we doing enough? What would you like to see added? There are
Okay.
simple audits you can get. You can get online. I've written several myself.
Mm-hmm.
You go through a checklist. Do we have these basic things in place?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always going to result in someone saying, I need X, Y, and Z, but it will result in them saying, thank you for asking. I'm glad you included me enough to say, are your needs being met? Churches are built on serving all their population.
Mm-hmm.
They're built on bringing together and bringing out the strength of all of us. They're not there to tell anyone they're less in faith or less deserving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Feel free to call me a yutz about any of this, by the way.
no, you're on point. And it saddens my heart to think that sometimes people may walk into a church and feel that way.
Yeah. But the key is we don't have to stay that way. I mean, yeah, you might start off totally ignorant, totally oblivious to your needs, but who's to say you aren't meant to grow in your journey? Someone with a disability may lead you.
Amen.
And truly, our disabilities are a source of strength. It's just a question of recognizing that they are a tool just like anything else. You can either build with them or not. You can either live with them or not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's up to each of us to make that decision. The church is never there to tell someone they need to be fixed or they are broken.
Mm-hmm.
They are there to say, we love you because you are a person, because you are a child of God, not because we need to, not because we feel sorry for your blindness, your deafness, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
We do it because you are a person. We do not do it simply because you're a person with a disability.
Right. Right. Well, before we let you go, I want to ask you a couple more quick questions. If you
Absolutely.
could interview anyone that you wanted to on your show, who would it be?
Honestly, this is going to sound stupid, but I'm a classic rock enthusiast, and I would love to interview singer Rick Springfield. Why? Because he's struggled with depression and he's done a lot of mental health work, and I would love to highlight his story.
So Rick Springfield. Okay, Rick Springfield, if you're listening, you need to reach out.
Yeah,
And
he does a show on the 80s network, but he kind of doesn't care he's on the radio. He just says whatever.
well, that would make for a good interview then.
It would.
Yeah. And then if there's anything else you would like to share with our listeners, what would you like to say?
Honestly, I want them to know that they matter. No matter what the condition is, no matter where they're coming from, no matter what it is that makes them special, whether it be different ethnic background, sexual orientation, disability, no matter what it is, you're still a person, your voice still counts, and there are people who still love you. Never, ever forget that. And also, as much as I would hate to throw this in, if anyone wants to reach me, I'm always willing to highlight stories. I mean, first rule of my show is kind of like the first rule of celebrating with friends and family on St. Patrick's Day. Always room for one more.
Very cool. Well, we will have in the show notes where they can reach out to you if anyone has a story they think would be a good fit.
Yeah.
And we are just so grateful that you came and talked to us today, Cam. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. And if there's anything else I can do to be of support, you know where to find me.
All right. Sounds good. To hear more from Cam, check out his show Handy Link on CJM 99.1 in Canada. Or if you're listening from other parts of the world, you can check out the show notes for an online access link. And if you have a story you think may be a good fit, email him at wellscameron@hotmail.com and put interview request in the subject line. And to see what we've been working on here at Wonderful Works, check us out at wonderfulworksministry.org. And don't forget, if you like this podcast, please follow and share with others. See you next time.